Well, hey there. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. It's so good to be with y'all today. My name is Alex. This is John. We're both coaches here at EntreLeadership, and we want to welcome you to today's webinar that is really focused on the pillars of business that will get you from survival mode, running on the hamster wheel, getting buried by working in the business, getting you out of that to a place where you can work on the business, where you can take a freaking vacation, where you can actually enjoy your life. That's going to be what we're focused on today. But before we jump in, I want to make sure we get everything squared away to make the most of this content today. So a couple things for you. Make sure you turn off everything going on in the background. Close all the tabs on your computer. Shut the door behind you. Silence your phone. We want to make sure you can focus because we've seen over and over and over again about really how the content that we present today can transform a business, but also transform a leader. But again, transformation is a product of engagement. So make sure that you're focused, make sure that you're all in, and then we're going to be leaving some time at the end to really answer questions. So write those down as we go, because we're going to be picking up those at the end about how you can really directly apply the principles to your direct situation.
That's right. So before we jump in, we introduced ourselves to you. We want you to introduce yourselves to us. So who are you? Where are you from? What's your business? We get people in these webinars from literally all over the world who attend these things. And so it's always fun for us to be able to see and hear kind of who you are, where you are, and what you do. So put that in the chat box now and give us an idea of who we have in the room.
You said all over the world. Terrence is in here from Dubai today.
Nice.
Welcome, Terrence. I have no idea what time it is in Dubai right now, but we appreciate you for being
Nighttime.
awake. Peter from Zimbabwe. Holy cow. Let's get some from the United States. Marietta, Georgia. There we go. Arizona, North Dakota, San Antonio, Texas. Awesome. So good to see so many names coming in today. Let's go over some stats as to why the content we present today is so important for business in America. We know this to be true. Only about 50% of new businesses survive 5 years or more. So basically, it's like flipping a coin. And about 33% survive a decade or more. So if you're going to do this sustainably over the long haul, it's going to be kind of against the grain. It's going to be you swimming upstream, because what we're going to talk about today is not normal, but that stat shows right there the results you want are not normal. In 2013, small businesses borrowed about $1 trillion, including $585 billion in business loans. If you know anything about Dave Ramsey, you know that stat right there makes us go crazy, right? We believe that business should move at the speed of cash. And I want you to know right off the bat today, the principles that you're going to hear today are going to teach you how to run and operate a debt-free business. And then finally, businesses lose approximately $11 billion every single year to employee turnover. We lead masterminds every day where we connect with business owners that are doing this. They're hiring, they're leading cultures and organizations. And the greatest challenge is both getting great people that are humble, hungry, and smart, but then keeping those great people. People are more likely and able to quit a job today than at any time in recent American history because they know they can go get another one somewhere else. Unemployment is so low. So again, we're going to teach you tools, tips, and principles today that will help you reduce that turnover number.
That's right. That's a main reason, one of the main reasons why we're here. We're also here because of you all. You all are the backbone of the economy. As small business owners, we know it's your work, it's your efforts that makes the economy move. It's what happens on Main Street, not what happens on Wall Street or in DC. We're also here to give a little bit of a glimpse behind in today's playbook. EntreLeadership, kind of glimpse behind the curtain. We want to show you all what it's like to lead and run a business the EntreLeadership way. We're also here because, let's face it, we've done this. Our school colors, we always joke, they're black and blue. It's like we've been beat up, we've been kicked around. What we're presenting today is working. It's not theory. It's pretty much as close to science as you can get. We've been named one of the top places to work in Nashville, and actually just got named the best place to work in Nashville. And it's a result of Dave and his hard work, but what he's also been able to teach us and how he's been able to run this business. It attracts people here. 28,000 applicants last year.
That's insane.
That's insane.
Yeah, and we're now at 900 people. But the principles that we're going to talk to you today, yes, we still use them now because they're what got us here, but they were also alive and well when we were 10 people, when we were 5 people, because these are birthed out of Dave's experience. So we want you to recognize the reason why we're here is we want to help you succeed. We win when you win. When we see the small business owner learn something exceptional and then actually do it, we get so fired up. So here's what you're going to learn today. And if this is sounding like you, go ahead and put a yes in the chat if this is kind of what you signed up for and what you're in to learn today. Number one is the character qualities of an EntreLeader. So we're going to discuss what is this whole EntreLeadership thing and why does it matter for the day-to-day of the business owner. Second, we're going to discuss the tried and true financial principles necessary to win in business. Many of you have likely heard of Financial Peace University and the Dave Ramsey Show, where we teach Dave's principles, and really they're God's and Grandma's principles for life and money. Well, he designed Financial Peace for business as well, and we're going to give you just the fundamentals, the basics of what that looks like for your organization. Number three, hiring practices that lower turnover. We see that the biggest thing you can do to lower that turnover number and start to preserve a thriving culture in your organization is make sure you get hiring right on the front end. So we're going to focus on that. Number four, how to create unity amongst your team. We say that unity does not occur naturally, it happens intentionally, and it happens because a leader got involved. So we're going to obviously double down on that. And then finally, the right way to influence and lead in such a way that others actually follow. It's been said that if you're leading and you look behind you and no one is following, you're not actually leading at all. You are just taking a walk. We don't want you to ever find yourself in that position. We don't have anything against walking, but we want you to be leading. So that's what we're going to be focused on today. So if you are in the game for that material, if that is up your alley of what you're wanting to learn today, go ahead and put a yes in the chat.
We've lots of yeses here.
And lots of caps lock too. I always say live life on caps lock. I'm game on with all of you that are going that way. So excited that you're on board. And if that's not for you, we're not going to hold it against you. I'm just going to tell you, you should probably log off right now. If you want to run your business in debt, probably not going to be your webinar, all right? And we're probably not going to be the company for you, and that's okay, but this is going to be what we're focused on today. The tried and true principles we've learned to grow our company, and we've taught it to business owners around the country now because we truly believe, because we've seen it happen, you can absolutely, undeniably win at business. But not only that, you can have a blast doing it. Too many of you are getting crushed by the thing you built. And we want that to end starting today. So that's really why we designed this webinar.
That's right. And obviously we are coaches here inside of EntreLeadership. Some of you, this may be your first exposure and experience to EntreLeadership. And you're probably wondering, what the heck does this word mean? What is an EntreLeader? Well, it's actually... shocker, it's a made-up word. When Dave set out to grow leaders inside this organization, he thought, well, what do we call them? Do we want a bunch of entrepreneurs? No, because we'd be too creative and not get anything done. Do we want a bunch of leaders or just leaders? No, because we need the creativity balance as well. And so he kind of combined them together and formed what we call EntreLeadership. Now, I'm curious from you all, when I say leader, what qualities do you think of? I want to see the qualities in the chat box. Go ahead and type. When I say the word leader, type out what character qualities or characteristics come to mind. Because we've done this enough. We know the answer to the question already, right? But we see integrity, visionary, teacher, servant, mentor, listener, yes. And you can see how those words line up with the slide that we already had ready for today. Integrity, passionate, servant, humble, visionary, disciplined. You guys are hitting the nail on the head. Now I want to hear what you think when I say the word entrepreneur. What character qualities come to mind? Put those in the chat box as well. Now,
I would say crazy would be.
Yeah. And I was one. I'm a recovering entrepreneur. I owned a business for 10 years. I've been on this wild ride that a lot of you all are on. But yeah, it's a lot of the same. Look at that. Risk taker, visionary comes back again. Creative, courageous, energetic, brave. I love these. And you can see the slide matches up. Driven, risk taker, fearless, out of the box thinker. That's what an entrepreneur is. You combine that with the characteristics of a leader, and you get EntreLeader.
Exactly. So let's dive into the real definitions. It says that a leader is someone who guides and inspires others. And if you think of someone right now, think of someone that has played that role of leader in your life. I guarantee you that was someone that ruled in terms of how they were moving forward. They guided and they inspired you. And then an entrepreneur is someone who organizes, operates, and they use that word that so many of you just put in the chat. They assume risk for a venture. So we want the polish of the leader and the passion of the entrepreneur, because EntreLeadership is the process of leading in such a way to cause a venture to both grow and prosper. We want leadership to make sure we're all moving in the same direction, but we don't want to lose the fire, the passion, the sense of urgency, the craziness to a degree of the entrepreneur. And that's really what the principles that we're going to talk to you about today were birthed out of. It's that recognition that we want to be entrepreneurial, but we also want to be strong leaders. And every single one of the 5 pillars we talked through today, you will be able to see elements of entrepreneurialism, but also tremendous leadership.
Yeah, that's right. Which brings us to pillar number 1. I believe that the first thing we got to get out, kind of get under control, is we have to understand our money. You all want, you used the word prosper a minute ago. We want to prosper. We want to have financial success because of the things that it allows us to do. It's going to allow us to grow our business. Obviously, you've heard that you got to spend money to make money. Well, at some point, you got to make money. You got to realize that financial success. You're going to be able to grow your business. You're going to be able to be more generous. You're going to be able to increase your impact. Dave says to live like no one else so later you can live and give like no one else. We want you to be generous with the profits that you are making. You're going to be able to offer compensation that ignites your team. If your team is stuck trading hours for dollars, I'm going to just tell you right now, that's pretty soul crushing. There's not going to be a lot of fire in your team. You got to offer comp packages that light them up. You're going to be able to invest back in the business. You're going to be able to capitalize on opportunities that come your way. If you have cash on hand, you're able to do things that don't require you to go into debt, that don't require you to leverage yourself and put yourself at more risk. Those things only happen when you have financial success. You're also going to be prepared for emergencies. We talk about emergency funds on the personal side. We're going to talk about what that looks like on the business side as well. And lastly, and maybe most importantly, you're going to have peace of mind. You're going to have the peace that comes with knowing there's cash in the bank, that there's cash on hand, that we are fine, that if no new clients call for a month or 3 months or 6 months, we got it covered. Our team's not going to know the difference. Our vendors aren't going to know the difference. Our customers aren't going to know the difference. Having financial success gives you the peace of mind that I know, as a former business owner, so many of you want. So many of you waiting, worried it's the 25th or the 27th or the 28th of the month and we don't have payroll yet. I know what that's like. And cash on hand, financial success, completely takes away that fear.
That's right. Peace of mind equals vacation,
yes.
Which so many, give us a yes in the chat if you're like, I am overdue for a vacation. That's what we're talking about here. Most small businesses fail because of poor accounting. You've heard the stat over and over and over again that the number one reason why small businesses fail, and 50% of them do in the first 5 years, is because the leader doesn't know their numbers. We hear it all the time. Know your numbers, know your numbers, know your numbers. But too often, business leaders are starting without enough money, so they didn't have enough capital in the first place to do what they wanted to do, so they start borrowing money right off the bat. And then they miss projections, or too often, I saw a group the other day that someone asked them, it was a group of business owners, and someone asked them, how many of you are running your business on a budget? And out of 12, one raised their hand.
Wow.
That is scary. We should be budgeting for the business just like we do for our personal lives. So you got to have projections, but then you also got to make those projections, and you've got to adapt and course correct on their way. Too often we see people are either forgetting or incorrectly paying their taxes. That can crush your business, right? Uncle Sam's gonna get paid whether your business survives it or not. So that's gonna be something that we need to focus on financially. And then finally, people always say, oh, I fell into cash flow problems. We hear that line so often whenever we intersect with people. And more often than not, when people say cash flow problems, it's really not that they have cash flow problems, it's that there's a lack of awareness or a sense of adequacy around the financial side of the business.
I had a guy I was talking to the other day, and he didn't know where $300,000 was. And he was having cash flow problems.
Yes.
He was doing like 600 in revenue, and he could account for like 300 of it, but he didn't know where the other half went. And turns out he did have it, and there were cash flow problems even with the 300. But to not know where half of his revenue was coming from, that was a head scratcher for me.
Well, how many of you know a mistake like that could it could crush your business, right?
Yeah.
You could get blindsided by that. Here's what's so sinister about this, though, is that we see that so often the greatest place where business leaders need help is in the financial side of the business. Because either they were an accidental CEO, or that this is not their strength or their strong suit. They're great with people, but not great with numbers, or it's not the part they enjoy. So it's the part where the area where they most need help, but it's the area where people are least willing to ask for help. Because so often we see people that they feel inadequate, or they feel guilty, or they just feel like, oh, I should know this, so I'm not going to ask for help. You crush that lie right now, okay? That's why we do these webinars, is because we know that lie exists in the back of people's minds, whether it's explicit or not. So if you have questions around what we present today, regardless of how simple they are, put them in the chat, because we're going to be answering questions at the end. We want to make sure we attack that feeling of inadequacy, because you can absolutely do this. We know that to be true. In Luke, the Bible says, "For which of you intending to build a tower or a business does not sit down and first count the cost, whether he has enough to finish it?" What it's talking about here is budgeting. We need to be counting the cost for what we want to do. It also says, "Where there is no vision, the people perish." Once we have that vision, we need to start asking the question, okay, what's it going to cost? How are we going to put our resources and invest, not spend, but invest our resources to get an exponential return? So what a business budget is going to do for you, just like your personal budget, it's going to project and forecast income and expenses, and thereby profits. When you give every dollar a name, you can tell it where to go. And when you start to get intentional about where you are investing your resources, specifically financially in this context, you're going to stop focusing on incremental return, and you're going to start focusing on where can we invest these so we get exponential return. It's also going to force you, if you have a rhythm of monthly creating and looking at your budget, looking at your P&L and projecting ahead, it's going to force you to prepare and think of options. How many of you know you can get really stinking creative when your back's pressed against the wall? But too often, when you don't have a budget, you may be against the wall, but you don't know it, and so you lack the creativity, or we procrastinate, or we do things like that. The budget will give you a sense of urgency to solve problems quickly, and it will give your team the same thing. It also gives you the ability that if you're maybe a landscape business, which maybe some of you are, that's me in the chat if you do own a landscape business, you know your line of work is likely very seasonal. If you create a budget and you have seasonal work, you're going to be able to budget for when the peaks happen, for when the valleys happen. And then one of the things we coach business owners all the time is getting creative about looking at ways to think critically about smoothing the valleys and the peaks to make it more reliable and consistent throughout the course of the year. But again, we need to be able to look at year over year and month over month data to be able to do that.
Yeah, if you're a seasonal business, you got to know, if you're a landscaper like Alex was talking about in Minnesota, and guess what? You're probably not mowing a bunch of lawns in December and January, but you could be a snow removal company.
Yep.
You know, you could hang Christmas lights. There's other things you can do, but if the bulk of your income comes in a certain amount of time, we need to budget for the full 12 months. So even though you may be doing 6 months worth of work, you probably got a year's worth of expenses, knowing how business works. You're going to have expenses in December and January, and the same that you would in July. Maybe they'll be a little bit higher in July because maybe you got more guys on the staff. But if you're the landscaper, you know, everybody gets surprised when Christmas comes around on December 25th. They're like, oh my gosh, wait, who put it on the 25th? It's like, y'all, we've known from day one that Christmas was on December 25th. If you're a
Literally
seasonal business,
day one.
yeah, if you're a seasonal business, you have to know your highs and lows, your peaks and valleys, and plan accordingly. John Maxwell says that a budget is telling people, telling their money rather, where to go instead of wondering where it went. That was the guy that I just talked about a few minutes ago. Had $300,000 unaccounted for. We talked about. I mentioned at the top of the webinar the emergency fund on the personal side. Well, we also want you to have that on the business side. We call it retained earnings. Now, we're going to use retained earnings for three things. One, emergencies. That's why it's an emergency fund for your business. We're also going to use it for reinvesting into the business. Maybe you need a new vehicle. You're in the construction industry. You need a new vehicle, or maybe you're adding team members. We're going to reinvest into the business, and you're going to be able to, lastly, capitalize on opportunities. If you're a landscaper and your competition's going out of business and you can buy his equipment for pennies on the dollar, that's how we're going to use our retained earnings. So emergencies, investing, and capitalizing. And our goal, what we would want your goal to be, is to have about 3 to 6 months, ideally 6 months, of operating capital in an account. Now, this is not an investment account. This isn't going to be in a mutual fund. This is going to be in something that's liquid, something you have access to, maybe a money market, savings account, etc. But some of you are sitting there going, well, yeah, I run a multi-million-dollar business. We're running $500,000 in operating expenses every month. Well, okay, then you need $3 million. If we're going 6 months, you need $3 million in expenses, and it's going to earn about 2%, unfortunately. But we don't want to put it in something that's earning 10 to 12%, but that's going to be hit with penalties and taxes and fees when we do need it. So 6 months of operating capital, operating expenses, and this includes everything. This includes you getting paid, your team getting paid, rent or mortgage, taxes, benefits, etc. This is everything. We're going to tell you to start lean. If we had to cut everything but your salary and just kind of the crucial kind of key team members or key expenses. Okay, let's start with maybe 3 months of that and work up to 6 months lean, and then 3 months fat to 6 months fat. So there'll be some fluctuation with this account, but continually be working towards that 6 month mark. Now, I'm curious, what do you all need for retained earnings? How much do you need saved based on that 6 month mark? If we're talking monthly operating expenses, multiply that times 6, and I want you to put that in the chat box. Ann says $390,000 for 6 months. So that's a great example. That's $400,000, almost $500,000, just sitting in an account. Yes, it's not gaining much interest, but yes, it's there in case you need it. Again, emergencies, investing, and capitalizing on opportunities. Those are some big numbers.
$350K, $180K. We're not saying you need to do this overnight, obviously, but we want that to be our goal. And this is something that we're in the same seat as y'all, where we are constantly trying to play catch up to this because the business is growing, right? Our business is growing. So what it takes to run the business, operational expenses for 6 months, is more today than it was 6 months ago. And so we're constantly expanding with that. More than anything, the principle that we want you to hear is that you need to have cash on hand for when a rainy day strikes. Because one of the things we'll talk about later today is it's not if, it's when a rainy day strikes. And imagine what that does for your peace of mind. Imagine what that does for getting you out of survival mode if you have that 3 to 6 months of operational expenses set aside.
Yeah, and Michelle, who said, I wish I knew how much I needed. Michelle, that's exactly the reason why you're on this webinar. So I just want to say congratulations for number one, showing up, and number two, being vulnerable, being honest with where you are right now in business, because today it's okay. And 6 months from now, if you still don't know, I'm gonna figure out where you live. We're going where you work. We're gonna hunt you down. We're gonna fix this. But for right now, I'd say that's okay. It's admitting where you are and knowing where you are, so we can take the next step and to get to where we need to be.
That's right. And so as a rhythm, you should be having, maybe it's a meeting with your bookkeeper, your accountant, maybe you're doing the numbers of your business, but just looking at the P&L every single month, evaluating how you did, and then if you're starting to budget this month, you're just going to say, okay, we're going to categorize our expenses based on what we spent this month in these categories, what would we expect to spend next month? And then at the end of next month, you're going to compare reality with the projections and the budget, and then you're going to create the next month. And eventually you're going to get to a pace where you're going to be more accurate, and that means you can start doing it quarterly, means you can start doing it yearly, and that's where this starts getting systematized. That's where you start getting out of survival mode.
That's right.
Again, Proverbs says that in the house of the wise are stores of choice food and oil. In other words, what this is saying is that wise people save. Right? Wise people save resources for when they need them, and that's what we're focused on here. Now, I know some of you on here may not be a cash-based business at this point. You may have debt on the business. That's totally fine, and we just want to be moving you out of that place. We want you to know that we have worked with businesses from every industry, leaders from every occupation, from all places around the country. It is possible to run a debt-free business if you decide that that is your goal and you are relentless about getting there. Now, there are some kind of particular ways that we approach getting out of business debt compared to getting out of personal debt. We're not going to dive into the details of that today because we don't have enough time to run through all the survival mode. If y'all do, if you do have business debt right now and you do want to dive in that a little bit more, you can put those questions in the chat because that will be some time at the end where we can dive more into the practical way of, okay, how are we going to look at debt and how are we going to make sure we start paying off that business debt both responsibly and aggressively. But more than anything, what we want you to hear is that we see over and over again, debt can take a small mistake and multiply it by a factor of about 10 because you are now making that mistake on someone else's dime. We want you to move at the speed of cash, not at the speed of borrowed money. And that's why we care so deeply about it, because we want mistakes to be things you can learn from, not things that you will be crushed by.
Now, a lot of you are sitting there going, well, I'm not a cash-based business. I do have debt, and I don't have retained earnings. How do I tackle both of these things at once? I would tell you to use the 80-20 rule. So we want you to save a 1 month of operating expenses as quickly as you can. Okay, that's going to be first and foremost. Is as quickly as you can, let's save 1 month. But then once we have 1 month set aside, we're going to start to, as profits come in, we're going to use the 80-20 rule. I want 80% of profits. Now I said profits, so this is everything on the top. 80% of profits going towards the debt. So we're going to get uber aggressive with that. And then 20% going towards continuing to fund our retained earnings account. So 80-20 towards debt, or 80 towards debt, 20 towards retained earnings after we have 1 month of operating expenses set aside. When you are carrying debt, or when you are budgeting rather, and you don't carry debt, you are able to invest in the thing that will absolutely, hands down, set you apart from the competition, which is your team. Now, I said earlier we had 28,000 applicants here last year. There's a reason why our team continues to grow, and we're attracting people. We don't have to go out and recruit. There's a big difference, even though those words sound similar. We're attracting people at a rapid rate. It's because we're able to do things. We're able to offer things. One of those being generous pay. Generous pay is going to be able to, you're going to be able to amplify your efforts when it comes to recognition, unity, loyalty, communication. Everything kind of increases exponentially when you're able to pay and pay well. So here's the action plan that I want you to carry out. I want you to create a budget for your business, and I want you to set a recurring time at the end of each month to review the budget and prepare for the next month. Get the stakeholders in the room, the people, the important people who you need, and it could be your CFO, could be your spouse, could be some of your key leaders. Get them in the room, figure out this budget, and tell them where we're headed for the next month. It may take you a few months, probably going to be a little clunky for the first few times you do it, maybe 3 or 4 months, but about that 5-6 month mark, y'all are going to hit your stride, and everything's going to be good from that moment on.
Couple questions here before we move on to the second pillar. Doran asked the question, won't you pay a ton of taxes on this 6 months of retained earnings? How do you shelter from the taxes?
You don't. Mm-hmm. Uncle Sam gets his. It's money made. You need to pay. You need to be on the up and up here, Doran. You need to pay taxes on money earned, and that's part of the cost of being a business owner, of playing the game here. So I'm going to tell you that you're not really able to shelter. And if you do try to shelter taxes, your competition might be able to buy you for pennies on the dollar if you end up filing bankruptcy or going to prison or something. It could be a really, really bad situation, obviously. So make sure you pay. Yes, it's money that, like I said, it's not an investment account. It's not a tax shelter. It's not a way to bypass Uncle Sam. It is what it is. But it is what it is on the positive to be there for a rainy day, to be there for emergencies and opportunities to, like I said, invest and capitalize.
It's worth the cost for the added security, I think.
100%.
I will say that there are smart ways to pay your taxes, right? That is not our expertise. You should be talking to an accountant, someone that can look at your books and give you the specific advice about how you should be paying your taxes with your financial situation. What we will tell you is that the principle here is 3 to 6 months of retained earnings. And that's regardless of line of business and regardless of how much the taxes are going to cost.
Yeah, Steve said, how do you budget in a seasonal business? We hit on this a little bit. Any other insights on that?
Again, just make sure you're diversifying. But first of that, we just need to look at year-over-year data, right? So we need to look at, compared to this September, what did we do last September? What did we do the September before? And then start looking ahead as a result and budgeting. For all of the budgets, whether you're seasonal or not, you're going to start this, and for the first 90 days, you're going to be bad but getting better, right? You're going to be probably way off at the outset, but every single month you do it, you're getting reps in and you're getting more accurate, and a year in, you're going to look up and you're going to say, I kind of know what we're going to do next month. And there will always be months where it's like, man, we didn't hit it right on the head, but again, it's the practice of budgeting that gives you the security necessary to get out of survival mode, and that's what we're focusing on. Final question before we move on to pillar number 2. Tricia asks, as business owners with zero business or finance education, what sources do you recommend for learning how to do basic accounting, projections, etc.?
Well, I would say 2 things to you, Tricia. One, we have a coaching program called All Access. We have a lot of tools inside of that where you're able to hear from Dave Ramsey himself, teaching on knowing your numbers, the importance of that. There's some interviews with our CFO, Mark Floyd. But then I would also tell you, trial and error. And get people alongside you, maybe a bookkeeper, maybe your CPA. Reach out to those folks to say, hey, this isn't really my bent. This isn't really my strong point. I'd like to learn how to do it, or I need to learn how to do it. Can you help me? So I would say utilize some of the resources around you. Again, the All Access program has a lot of stuff in there for you, but then also the folks you know. And if it's not your strong suit, that's okay. I will say, admittedly, as an owner, finances weren't my strong suit. My wife and our accountant handled a lot of that, but I had a general understanding of and was day-to-day, kind of week in, week out, keeping up with the books to know what we had coming in, ballpark what we had going out. So I had a very good understanding. I didn't know, to the penny, but somebody else did. And I had the kind of 30,000-foot view of, okay, this is good, okay, this is in, that's out, and then my accountant would get down to the penny on it.
And whether it's your business coach or your accountant or a mentor or a business partner, make sure that who you are working with has the heart of a teacher. That is so crucial, because this needs to be a topic that you are able to learn and feel competent around. You never have to be an expert, because you can hire for this as well, but we do need basic competency, because this is the thing that keeps your business moving forward. Let's jump on to pillar number 2. We talked about the financial side of business. Now let's talk about the people side of business.
Do we have to?
That's right.
Can we just skip this part?
There's that great quote that says, business is easy until people get involved. Ain't that the truth? This can be the greatest blessing or the greatest burden on your team. But here's what we know to be true, is that when you have a proper hiring process, it's going to create a good team. And a good team is ultimately what lowers turnover turnover. This all starts with the hiring process, and the thing that we're going to focus on there big time is process, right? If your hiring process is your gut feeling, we're never going to tell you to go against your gut, but it's really hard to scale your gut feeling, right? So that's what we're going to focus on today, is having a hiring process that can be scaled, that can be delegated, and that can be duplicated. Now, turnover is very expensive. How many of you know that to be true? And particularly in small business, because when you have one of your 10 team member team, when one of those people leaves, that's 10%. The entire boat just got rocked, right? If someone leaves a lifeboat, you're feeling that. If someone leaves a cruise ship, it's okay. But folks, if you run a small business, turnover can crush your culture. It can really, really hurt your bottom line, and it hurts team morale. So what we'd like to know right off the bat is, if you were to ballpark, how much does a bad hire cost you? If you were to ballpark and just think like, okay, that person, I hired them, I shouldn't have let them in the door, I let crazy in the building, they damaged our reputation, they damaged our customers.
Guilty.
I know, if you've been in business for 5 minutes, you have this story. So how much has a bad hire cost you before? We hear stories about this all the time.
$50,000.
$50,000, $150,000. Gosh, we're shooting for the fences in the worst kind of way right now. My goodness. Thousands. Someone said sleep. Someone said my sanity. $75,000, $50K. Yeah, this is an expensive proposition. So it's really, really important that we get hiring right.
Tyler says he doesn't want to know. I'm with you, Tyler. I'm with you. I've made
Out of
those bad
sight, out of
hires.
mind,
oh
right?
my gosh. Yeah, I've made those bad hires too many times. But you know, the reason we make those is often because we don't take enough time to interview the person. We don't have the process laid out. And Dave's old hiring method was, can you fog a mirror? You know, you have a pulse? Let's see. Okay, you're hired. You, come on, we'll put you to work. But that's the biggest mistake that we make, we being collective business owners, but also one of the easiest to fix. The more time you spend with getting to know a candidate, you lower the risk of making that bad hire. It drops exponentially. So some of you are doing 1 interview, do 4. Some of you doing 2, do 8. You know, expand this a little bit. Get more people involved. You as an EntreLeader, you have to be looking for team members who have a combination of opportunistic motivation and philosophical motivation. Opportunistic meaning they're hungry. They want the opportunity. They want the job that you're offering. They want to come work for your company. Philosophical motivation means they are who you are. They fit your culture. And how well your potential employee fits your culture and the team they're going to be joining, in my opinion, is as, if not more important than experience and talent. And let me say, as an owner, I've made bad hires, and every time I hired somebody that was a bad hire, it was because I was wowed by their resume. I was looking at the skill set. Oh, this person's already trained. Oh, this person has experience. And they were awful in terms of culture fits. They weren't who we were. They didn't fit. It was a square peg in a round hole. Stop hiring for skill. Stop it. You can teach Bobo the chimp to sell something, right? Hire the personality fit. Hire that person who believes what you believe, who has the same motivation that you do, who's climbing the same mountain you are. Stop looking at the resume and saying they went to an Ivy League school, or they have 10 years of experience in this particular thing, or they've been a VP before, so they're going to be a great VP in our company. It's not true. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Stop it.
I hear you.
Okay,
right?
you stop hiring
I think
for
people that
skill.
weren't even on this webinar heard you, so I love how passionate. But I think we're passionate about that because we've seen what happens when people do it wrong, and it's all the expenses that people just put in the chat. But we've also seen the benefit of how much of a blessing it can be to hire people that are smarter than you and
Yes.
care as much as you do.
The person that I hired that was pure skill, she was awful.
Yeah.
She looked like she just walked out of a tornado. Like, hair was messed up. Every day she showed up to work. Shirt was untucked. A couple times she wasn't wearing shoes. I'm not making this up. The one of the best hires I ever made was somebody who didn't have any skill, and she called me one day and she said, "Can I just come hang out? Can I just come learn a couple days a week?" And I'm like, "For free?" She's like, "Yeah, for free." I'm like, "Sure." Like, you can, like, she's like, "I'll vacuum, I'll sweep the floors, I'll do whatever." She was probably my best employee ever, and the one who had the skill hands down the worst person I ever hired. So
Forever to be known as flip-flop girl.
yeah, well, I wish she would have had flip-flops on. She was straight up barefoot. So when we've found people who have gotten in that shouldn't have, we've added a step to our hiring process to avoid doing it again, and that's what we want you all to do.
Exactly. So that's what we have for you now is we've got a giveaway that's our hiring guide. So many times people ask us, okay, well, what is your process? And that's what this is. It's a one-pager that kind of details every step of our process. I will tell you, do not feel like you have to duplicate that to a T starting today. What we want you to duplicate is the principle of take more time than you currently are, make sure that you're searching for culture fit and humble, hungry, smart, and then make sure that you are interviewing in such a way that you can assess the person's consistency, number one, and their integrity, number two. So if you go to EntreLeadership.com/good-hire, that's where you can get that hiring guide.
Not right now, though.
Yeah, that's right.
We told you to
write that
eliminate
down.
all distractions, but later.
That's right. Now, there are 3 reasons why team members fail, and so often whenever we run into performance issues or issues within a team, whether it's talking to people on masterminds or you on Ask the Coach or anytime we intersect with people at events, we kind of run through these 3 potential problems. So 3 reasons why team members fail: leadership problems, personal problems, or incompetence. And we're going to address each of these just briefly real quick. If the problem is a failure caused by leadership, and this should be the first one we always look at. If it's a problem that's caused by leadership, we always should look in the mirror. Because the challenge with a failure caused by leadership is that you are the problem. I am the problem. We are the problem. But the benefit to it being a failure caused by leadership is you are also the solution. So do your organization the benefit of the doubt by having an ownership mentality, and first, anytime something is going wrong, looking in the mirror and saying, what can I do better to make this situation healthy? Now, sometimes you will not be the problem. Sometimes it will be something associated with the individual. A lot of times, and I had this on a mastermind the other day, someone came and they said, I had this high performer that had been knocking out of the park for 2 years. They just hit their 3rd year, and it's just like performance has dipped. And they said, I don't know if it's a slump. I don't know if they've just stopped caring. It's just their attitude isn't as good anymore. And so the next thing we do is we don't go to blame. We go to the fact that, okay, if it's not a leadership problem, then maybe it's a failure caused by personal problems. And specifically, if you have an individual on your team that has a pattern of high performance, always do them the service of finding out if there are personal problems going on. And the solution is to use the golden rule. Treat people the way you would like to be treated. What does this mean? Apple has a great line that they talk about when giving feedback. It's 3 words: assume positive intent. Right? Most people are just doing the best they can with what they have to work with. And when we take on that assumption from a leadership perspective, our lens change and the way we treat people change and the way they receive our leadership changes. So what does this look like? It means asking more questions than giving declarations. It means seeking to listen, seeking to understand, and not to accuse. Because a lot of times what you will find, if someone has a pattern of high performance that is dipped, whenever you sit down with them and you say, hey, I noticed this is kind of stressing me out. I assume it's stressing you out too. I just wanted to talk about it. Is everything okay? A lot of times they'll say something to the effect of, we've heard stories of, well, yeah, just my marriage is not in a good place right now, or I just had my parent passed away, or there are things going on that, boy, wouldn't you feel terrible if you said, you're not doing your job, get back to work. No, that's not the way you handle that. That's being a boss and not a leader. So handle personal problems well. But then inevitably there's failure caused by incompetence, right? And when you allow this to continue, we call that sanctioned incompetence. So if there is a performance problem related to someone's knowledge, their skills, their habits, or their attitude, the solution is you take action to correct the problem. No ifs, ands, buts, or excuses. You have to take action, because if you fail to take action on incompetence in your organization, if you fail to take action, then the problem is no longer the performance issue, the problem is you. because you didn't have the backbone to take action. I'm talking sternly here because we care so deeply about your organization being healthy, and nothing kills an organization faster than sanctioned incompetence. So this is why you need to be a good leader, is because unity never happens naturally. People do not naturally unify. They have to be led to do so around a common vision, mission, and statement of principles or core values.
That's right. And there are actually 5 enemies of unity. These are 5 things that you are facing and fighting every day. Number 1, poor communication. It's from whether you to them or amongst team members, they will be disunified if the communication avenues are not open. Number 2, lack of a shared purpose. If I'm going this way and Alex is going that way, we're not really going in the same direction. We don't have that shared purpose. We are split. We're not headed in the same direction. Number 3, gossip. If you don't have a no gossip policy, start one today. Roll it out and tell your folks we are not going to stand for gossip. We define that as if I'm talking to my leader, negatives go up, positives go out. If I'm talking to my leader about something or someone and my leader can do something about it, great, that's not gossip. But if I'm talking to Alex about something and he can't do anything about it, something or someone, that's gossip. So negatives go up, positives go out. Number 4, unresolved disagreements. Sometimes you just got to bury the hatchet. And you got to get the people in the room who are arguing together and say, look, Teresa, Jill, what's up? What's going on with you guys? Steve, Carl, why are you guys fighting with each other? You got to resolve the disagreement. And lastly, sanctioned incompetence. Alex hit on this a second ago. Is it a leadership issue? Is it a team member issue or a training issue maybe? Or is it incompetence? The longer you let it happen, the more you are sanctioning that, and that's on you. So here's the action plan. I want you to gather your leaders in a room and follow these 4 steps. I want them to rank how important they think company culture is, 0 to 10. How important is it? And secondly, how healthy do they think your company culture is currently? And then 3, I want you to brainstorm ways you can close that gap. If they think it's importance of a 9, but culture is actually a 3, we got some work to do. And then I want you to schedule a time to check on progress. Don't just roll this out. Don't just hold this meeting and then never follow up on it. That's going to kill culture. That's going to be kind of a double whammy. Wanted to let you guys know about our next giveaway. It's the Power of Intentionality teaching from Dave Ramsey. Y'all, this is good. I don't want you to go there right now, but when the webinar ends, go to EntreLeadership.com/power. You're going to be able to watch that video and listen to Dave teaching on how important it is to be intentional in your business and intentional as a leader. And also stay with us because we're going to tell you how to get our guide to delegation. So don't go anywhere with that. But now we are at pillar number 3, understanding leadership.
Exactly. And if you have questions as we go, just go ahead and put those in the chat. We will be addressing those at the end as well. Let's jump into leadership. We know this to be true. Great leadership is never accidental. It is always intentional, and it must be learned. Vince Lombardi said that leaders are made, they are not born. They are made by hard effort, which is the price all of us must pay to achieve a goal that is worthwhile. You go to the hospital, they say it's a boy or girl. They never say it's a leader. That's what we're talking about here. You can learn to be a great leader. So regardless of where you think you are today, if you don't think you are one, you can become one. If you are one, you can become a better one. But every leader should practice and exercise regularly asking their team these 3 questions. 3 questions that you can start asking your team starting today, and I want you to really genuinely ask them. How are you? Number 1. And almost always people will say, oh, I'm good, I'm fine, I'm okay. I want you to ask them again, no, really, how are you? Because people will get off their autopilot, and that's when you get into the real conversations. Number 1 is how are you? Number 2 is what are you working on? And number 3 is how can I help? We all love the idea of servant leadership. This is what it looks like, is walking up to someone and saying, hey, how are you? What are you working on? And how can I help?
Yeah, and one of the biggest transitions you all are going to have to make as leaders is going from working in to working on. Working on your business is one of the most difficult transitions to make, but it's one of the most rewarding and impactful transitions you can make. There is a lid on your organization and your future, and guess who that is? It's you. I hate to say it, but I like to say it because the problems in business are your fault. That's kind of the good news and the bad news. I'm curious, where have you been the lid on your organization? Put that in the chat. If you have an example of, hey, yeah, this is what I did, or this was a situation, put that in the chat for me, because like I said earlier, recognition is half of the taking that first step and going, hey, yeah, I was the lid in this situation. I'm going to improve and be a better leader next time. That's half the battle, my friends. Whatever happens at the head of the organization will affect the entire body. That's why admitting, you know what, I have been the lid in this situation. That's why admitting it is so important, because it's the recognition which allows for those action steps to be taken. So, here we go. Fear of change, marketing, financial, went with feelings instead of facts. Yeah, you all are being the lid and you're admitting it, which I love.
Yeah, you will never fix what you cannot see or what you refuse to see. So that's step one. A couple pitfalls that we would tell you to look out for. Avoid executive perks and ivory towers. Some of you are at the stage of business where you can start getting the executive perks. Those things will make you more isolated than you already are. There's that great line that says your team feels like it's 10 miles to your office when you feel like it's 10 feet to them, right? They already, just by nature of position, feel like you're far away. Don't you dare put barriers to entry to being in the trenches with them. So avoid those executive perks and ivory towers, and look for small opportunities to show your team that you're all in this together. Remember, if you lead with positional power only, you are simply a boss. Anyone can give a position. Respect, influence, and trust must be earned. So do the hard work of earning people's trust and respect, because that's what leadership actually is.
That's right. So here's the action plan. Those of you wanting to improve on where you are as a leader right now, take time this week to walk around your office. Ask your team members those 3 questions that Alex mentioned a minute ago. How are you? What are you working on? And how can I help? Encourage your leaders to do the same with their respective departments, because you may be at the head, but you may not be the only leader in the organization. So encourage them. Get in the trenches with your folks. Get out of the ivory tower. Get onto that factory floor. You'll benefit from it, and they will benefit from it. Now, I know that what we've given you today is a lot of content. If you're anything like me, you're feeling like, you know what, I've accomplished a lot today just by showing up.
Yep.
Pat yourself on the back. But here's the crazy thing. Everything we've taught you today is true, and it's completely worthless. And I'll tell you why. Just hang in there. But first, I want to tell you about a friend of ours named Brett. Brett has been a coaching client of ours for several years now. Gosh, 4, 5, 6 years probably. Yeah. He runs a small business in central Indiana. He's just like a lot of you are. The other day, the salon that Brett shares with his building caught on fire. The salon was completely lost, and Brett's offices were destroyed. There was smoke damage, water damage. It was a mess. This sent Brett and his team into a bit of a flurry because of all the things related to insurance claim, just the chaos of the situation. And they still had to serve their customers every day. So building catches on fire, but it's like we can't take any days off. Now, over the years, Brett has been learning everything we've taught you today and more. And you know what all that knowledge did to help him and his team when their building caught fire? Not a stinking thing. Absolutely nothing. And you know why? Because the knowledge that he had did nothing without action involved. If you don't, the knowledge in and of itself doesn't help you navigate through life. What it does help is learning how to use the knowledge you've gained. And what's even better is having people around you, people in your life who can push you and help you grow in your abilities as a leader, your abilities to lead. And that's exactly what Brett did. He worked at applying everything he had learned here inside of EntreLeadership. He also committed to meeting with a small group of owners who think and act like he does. And when he got stuck, he reached out for help to his coaches. He also connected with the other leaders in our All Access coaching program. But let me tell you one of my greatest fears with you all, having been an owner, having known Brett's story. One of my greatest fears is that when your fire happens, may not be a literal fire, maybe something with a team member, maybe something with a landlord, maybe something with a marketing campaign. When your fire happens, my fear is that you aren't going to be prepared the way Brett was. My fear is that you'll face that moment unprepared. You'll be thrown into survival mode, a little bit of a downward spiral. There's no end in sight. But the good news is it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to be stuck in survival mode. If you want help getting out of survival mode or you want to avoid it altogether, it's time to join our All Access coaching program. When you sign up, you're going to get access to more trusted content like what you've experienced today. In fact, we're going to even go deeper than we did today. You're going to be placed into a mastermind group, just like Brett is a part of. It's going to be 8 to 10 other business leaders. We're going to have you meet for 90 minutes a month on a video conference call. And on that call, you're going to be able to get the accountability and the perspective that you need to take your business to the next step. Your business is going to be able to go beyond what you can do alone. When you get stuck and when you need advice along the way, you're going to have access to what Alex mentioned earlier, a show called Ask the Coach. It's a daily call-in show where you and I can talk through anything and everything under the sun business related. We're also going to put you in our private Facebook group. We have 3,500 other business owners, 3,500 other business owners who are, they think, they act the way you do, they lead the way you do, and they're ready to help you. So how does Brett's story end? Well, admittedly, it's a little bit of a work in progress, but remember how I mentioned that Brett learned to grow himself and set his business up for success? That growth in leadership meant that he had a great team of people working alongside him. They snapped into action. They didn't skip a beat in serving their clients, and it meant that Brett was able to focus on keeping the business moving forward, and he didn't get stuck in survival mode. And because of the work that Brett has done over the years, he's actually now on plan to buy the building outright in the next few years, which I think is pretty cool. The salon moved out. He doesn't have to try to now any longer make his business fit this box, this building. He gets to build it out how he wants it. So you're probably sitting there thinking, yeah, that's great. That's a one-of-a-kind story. Well, maybe you don't have a building. Rest assured, it's not a one-of-a-kind story. You may not have a building. Maybe you don't have a team. You're a solopreneur or kind of mom and pop shop. Maybe you're thinking success like this could never happen. Let me tell you something. We see it day in and day out with all the other owners and leaders in our coaching program. We see it all the time. If you want to be the kind of person who has a story like Brett, it's time to join our All Access coaching program. When you sign up, the first step is going to be to hop on a coaching consultation call with one of us coaches. We have 5 of us on the team. We're going to get together with you for 30 minutes and talk about you. We're going to learn who are you, where are you, what do you do, how big's your team, what's revenue looking like, what are some pain points you're struggling with. We're going to help you develop a game plan for what you and your business need right now. So after you sign up, you're going to get an email with that link to schedule that call. And for those of you who joined today, we want to say thanks. We're going to give you a special access to a special price. It's only good until the end of this webinar. You're going to get $50 off the normal price of $299. Go to EntreLeadership.com/all-access. And normally $300, going to be $249 today with the code SAVE, S-A-V-E. So you're going to have access to everything we've talked about today and more. Listen, business it's tough already. Please don't make it harder than it has to be. Don't make it more difficult by going it alone. We've seen it in Brett's story. He had folks around him. I know it to be true in Dave's story. He has folks around him. We've heard it from countless others. You can have fun at business. I promise you can. Some of you are in survival mode. It's not real fun when you're in survival mode, but you can have a blast in business, I promise. And at the same time, you can win, because winning is fun. I coach baseball, that's what I tell my boys. It's fun to win. It's not a lot of fun when you're getting your butt kicked, and some of you are getting your butt kicked right now. So go to EntreLeadership.com/all-access, use the promo code SAVE, and start writing your story. Just like Brett's story. Start writing your Brett story.
That's right.
We'll take some questions. This is a good, very responsive audience today.
It is, yeah. So again, EntreLeadership.com/all-access. And if you do sign up, and if you're in the process of doing that right now while we're taking these questions, make sure you look out, because the first thing you're going to get is an email to sign up for that one-on-one call. And so whether it's John, myself, or someone else on our team, we're just going to want to talk to you about, okay, where are you at with regard to your business? What is the thing in this webinar that you heard that you really responded to and said, I want to start taking action on that? And then we're going to lay out the game plan for you doing that. So again, the first step, if you do sign up today, is schedule that one-on-one call ASAP.
Yep.
Let's jump into some questions. Glenn asked the question, do you recommend personality testing? If so, which one?
Well, we do. We do the DISC assessment here, DISC, and it's something that I think it's pretty easy to interpret. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think it's pretty black and white, pretty clear. There are countless others. There's Myers-Briggs, and there's the Enneagram, and there's Strengths Finders, and you can kind of pick your poison there a little bit. But we use DISC. Every person in the interview process takes the DISC assessment, and then when they come on board, we get a little printout that goes right by our desk, and it's up on our intranet that says, hey, Alex is a high I, or John's a high S, and it kind of gives that scale so that if I'm going into a meeting with Alex and he's a high I can't bore him with the details that a high C would like, and because he's going to check out. Now, if I'm going into a meeting with a high C, I'm not going to be real over the top, energetic and personal like a high I would be, because they're going to tune out to that. I'm going to give them the details, and we're going to dive deep into it and tell them everything they need to know. So that's how and why we use it here. I'm going to caution you too, if you do implement a DISC assessment or some sort of personality assessment, don't hire because of the results, and don't not hire because of the results. Typically, somebody in sales, they're going to be a high I. We're on camera a lot, we're high I's. But that doesn't mean that somebody who's a high C or a high S can't succeed in sales or on camera or something like that. So don't hire because of the results, and don't not hire because of it. Again, find the culture fit. Are they the right person for the job? Not skill set, but are they the right person? You may need some skills. That's fine. We can't, we're not going to hire somebody who doesn't know anything. But do they have the right skill set that we're looking for? But more so, are they the culture fit that we need?
Yeah, Bob, I see your question. I have a martial arts school for 34 years. That's awesome. We gross $250K to $275K per year. Would All Access be a fit for me? Here's what I would tell anyone on here. If the content that we presented today in the webinar was a fit for you, then All Access is basically taking that content and holding you accountable to put it into action. So if this was relevant to you today, then absolutely. I've got a guy that owns a martial arts school in one of my masterminds. He's been in it for 2 years now, and we meet once a month, and man, he's crushing it right now. His culture is exploding. He just opened his second location. He's come to a couple of our events as well. He's grown immensely in his leadership capacity, but his team, the turnover has dramatically dropped. So again, if the principles we talked about in today's webinar applied to you, then All Access is essentially saying like, okay, which one do we need to focus on first? And let's lay out the game plan to put that into action. So absolutely, I would say yes, Bob. Rachel asked the question, I would like to know more in detail about how you advise to pay off business debt versus personal debt.
Well, Rachel, I'll tell you, debt is debt. So on the personal side, we want to attack smallest to largest. So don't worry about interest rate. It's purely amount, smallest debt to largest debt. On the business side, we're going to do the same thing. It's just a matter of how we pay those things off. So get that 1 month of retained earnings, of operating expenses, operating capital, get that in the bank, and then any net profits that we're bringing in, on top of that or after that, we're going to use the 80-20 rule. So if you need $10,000 a month to run your business, and 1 month you bring in 20. Great, that's $10,000 in profit. So let's say you already have your month set aside. We're going to take that money, that $10,000, and we're going to use that 80-20 rule. $8,000 is going towards paying down the debt. $2,000 is going to go into our retained earnings account on top of the 1 month, in this example, the $10,000 that we already had. So now you have $12,000 in your retained earnings account. The next month, let's say we do it again. $8,000 to debt and $2,000 to retained earnings. We got now $14,000 to retained earnings. So you're going to start to build that account up while getting uber aggressive. I mean fanatically aggressive at paying down the debt. We don't want to cash starve the business. So we don't want all the profit going towards paying down the debt. We need to build our cushion a little bit. But so don't cash starve it, but get aggressive about paying off that debt.
Very good. Very good.
Sarah, welcome to All Access. I love it. Congratulations. Welcome to the family, Sarah. Anxious to be on a call with you.
Yeah, exactly. Sarah, make sure you schedule that one-on-one call because that's the first email you're going to get, so make sure you sign up for that, Sarah.
Gail says, how do you budget when you are just starting a business?
Yeah, same way as we said before. More than anything right now, at the end of every single month, we want you to look at your P&L, and that should be kind of fundamentals. Make sure you're getting that from QuickBooks or however you're doing that. Maybe you're having an outside bookkeeper do your books, but make sure you're looking at your P&L at the end of the month and saying, okay, we're going to categorize our expenses at the end of the month. And then based on those categories, we're going to project what we're going to do next month. And then at the end of that month, we're going to say, okay, here's where we landed and here's what we projected. And then you're going to make adjustments based on the upcoming month. You're going to do that every single month. And if you want to look over it weekly as to how you're tracking, that certainly can't hurt you. It's really, really good to spend time with your numbers every week, if not every single day. Doesn't have to be an exorbitant amount of time, but just checking it out to evaluate kind of comfortability, security. It's going to make you more confident and competent around your numbers and the current state of your business. But again, you're going to get better as you go, so don't feel like you need to be perfect right off the bat. But just building in that monthly P&L rhythm and projecting ahead, and eventually, one of the things that we can talk about more, and we have a lesson with our CFO in All Access that y'all can watch if you want to look at this. Once we get really good at the budget, the next thing we're going to look at with you is a rolling 90-day budget. So where we are constantly projecting both annually, both monthly, and then also what are we going to do for the next 90 days. And the closest month should, obviously the closest 30 days should be the most accurate. And then we have a higher degree of tolerance or leniency for 60 and 90 days. But again, you're constantly looking 90 days into the future, so you never hit any surprises or seasonality that you weren't expecting and you didn't plan for. That's going to be the next step.
And we're now at a point where we're projecting 18 months out, but it started month to month. Right, it started sitting down on the 25th and going, gosh, we really missed the mark over here, but man, we hit this on the head over here and projecting for the next month. But now we're on an 18-month rolling schedule. But don't get caught up in that. That's to come, coming attractions type thing. Right now, month to month, exactly what Alex said. And the key word that I think you used there was projections. Mm-hmm. You're not going to get it right, especially these first few months. It's a little bit of a guess, but you're going to get closer and closer and closer to hitting that right number the more you do it.
Exactly. Very good. Joshua asked the question, I'm not in leadership at my company, but I am on track to be there in a few years. Awesome. Congratulations, Joshua. How can I apply these pillars now so I can be prepared when I move into leadership?
Well, Joshua, I would say lead up. I would say leadership is not defined by title. It's defined by your influence and your impact on those around you. So I would say lead up. There's a great book by Clay Scroggins, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. I would highly recommend you order that today, have it delivered and read it over the weekend. But it's that good. But it talks about leading up, and Clay mentions Clay's a pastor at North Point Church. I think it's North Point in Atlanta area, and he talks about how his line of thinking was, when I have the title, then I'll start leading. And I'm paraphrasing, but when then, as opposed to I'm going to lead now so that I can, eventually, whether I have the title or not, I'm in a leadership position. But I'm going to begin to lead up, lead those around you, and don't be afraid to kind of put your stamp on things, put your mark on things. It's going to show your dedication, your drive, your ambition to those folks who are in leadership. And they're going to say, you know what, that kid there, he's got something.
Yeah.
He's got that spark. He's got that special something that we're looking for at our leadership level.
Exactly. And your mindset is already correct. Start doing this where you are. Jonathan, welcome to All Access. Again, make sure you schedule that call. That's going to be your first step. We're really, really glad to have you. Carrie asked the question, do you group businesses within All Access by industry so participation is in alignment? We did that for a while, and what we learned is our goal for you is that you are working on the business and not in the business. And if we're not careful, if we surround you by people that are in your industry, you will get advice that everyone in your industry is doing, which means you will get results that everyone in your industry is getting. And what do we not want? We do not want to be normal, because normal freaking sucks, right? So that's why we started grouping people Our goal is always to put you in a group of like-minded leaders that are at a similar stage of business as you are or a little bit ahead of you. So you've got some people in there that can kick you in the tail or that have been where you are currently before and can say, hey, here's the path. I can play the role of guide. And our coaches, me, John, and our other coaches all facilitate those conversations. But again, we are focused on getting you out of the weeds of your industry and into the strategic side of business. And what we've seen is that when people start to think principally about the tried and true nature of things that work, that transcends industry. And they can start to scale a business beyond themselves.
Yeah, 100% agree. Tatiana asks, do you apply all these principles when you have 1099 employees?
Yes, to the degree that you are legally able. And we would say that that is true for anything we teach on here today, right? A person's employment status should not affect your culture and your leadership, right? So now, obviously, you need to abide by that contract, right, if they are a contractor. But again, the way you lead should not change, and you should always be striving for the same goal because, again, the thing that is on the other side of your leadership is your team, and the thing that's on the other side of your team is your customer. And whether it's a contractor or a full-time employee or a part-time employee or a high school kid that you pay hourly, we need to lead in such a way that they give the customer an unbelievable experience.
100%. I like it.
Very good. Kyle asked the question, I realize I've been allowing sanction incompetence for over a year with one employee in particular who has been here longer than I have and definitely longer than I've been their leader. What is the best way to approach addressing it? Really solid question, Kyle.
Run! No, I'm kidding, Kyle. I'm kidding. One of my first jobs out of college, I was 26 years old. I was state manager for an insurance company. There was a guy on my team who had been with the company 27 years. I was only 26. So he'd been with the company longer than I had been alive. That was an opportunity, just like what I talked about earlier, to lead up. And that was a big jump. That was a big stretch. I went from sales to management, and it was to this leadership role. I admittedly probably wasn't prepared for it well, but it was put in this position. And it was very, very hard for me. What I would tell you to lead this gentleman, what I would tell you, Kyle, is I would have a conversation with him. And if you need to, I would write out everything that you want to get across to him. And just say, hey, Joe, this is a hard conversation for me to have. I've put some thoughts on paper. You mind if I take a couple minutes and read these to you and you listen to what I have to say? And then just tell him. I've realized that I haven't led you well. I'm kind of following your sword here a little bit, Kyle. I haven't led you well. I've been allowing you to do this, whatever the action or whatever it is, whatever the scenario is. I've been allowing this to continue, and as your leader, respectfully knowing that you've been here longer than I have, and I haven't been in leadership that long, but I am now. As your leader, I have to ask that this stop. I have to ask that this improve. I have to ask that this change. Whatever that scenario is, write it out, script it out. That's what would help me. We've talked about the DISC assessment, the DISC profile. I'm a high S, so we like stability. We don't like to rock the boat a little bit, so this has helped me. Just kind of get thoughts on paper, and that way when I do come to the meeting, I don't clam up, freeze up. I'm there, I'm present, and I'm able to get across everything that I need to say. But if I'm in your shoes, that's what I'm going to do. But take action. There's a great quote. I forget who it's by. But he said, you've said it before, but what are the little things now that you're ignoring that if left ignored become big things later? What are the little explosions you're letting happen now that eventually could just kind of blow up in your face if they go unaddressed? And now you balance that with the engine runs on 1,000 tiny explosions, right? But if we don't nurture it, if we don't take care of it, it's going to be one big explosion and your car's not going to run. So find that balance between a little bit of friction. I think friction is healthy at times. I think it's good. I like that there's an opportunity for you to grow and an opportunity for this guy to grow as your direct report. But we can't let this thing just fester and fester and fester and then have this big explosion on our hands where everybody walks away feeling, hopefully walks away. They may limp away wounded by what happened in that meeting.
That's right. Very good. Carrie Lee asks, can you go over what's included in the monthly coaching program? So the first thing you're going to do is a one-on-one call where we go over your business and kind of understand where you're at and your vision for the future, where you want to go. And then based on that, we lay out the game plan. But a lot of times, the first thing we do is we place people in what we call a base camp group. And a base camp group really helps you create your mission statement, your compelling vision for your organization, and your core values for your team. And so that's the first thing we're going to run you through. That's 3 weeks just back to back where we just say, okay, for an hour, we're going to at least get a draft of these things knocked out because that's the foundation of a great business that isn't in survival mode. Not everyone goes through that course, but if you need those items, that's the first step. The next thing that's going to happen is you're going to be placed in a mastermind group, which is you and 6 to 10 other business owners that share your values. And that group is focused on a couple of things. It's focused on accountability, number 1, perspective, number 2, and action, number 3. It's always led by one of our coaches. You meet once a month, and we're going to challenge you to make progress on a number 1 priority, working on the business. And inevitably, if you are actually moving the business forward because you are doing the leadership work to get above and ahead of things, you're going to have questions and you're going to face blockers. And that's what that discussion becomes, is focused on helping you scale the blockers necessary to accomplish your priority. But again, we coach you through all that. Then you also have access to a daily call-in show that John does every single day, where you get questions about everything from finances to delegation to mission statements. It really runs the gamut, isn't that right?
Yeah. There's some unexpected questions too. Stuff that I was like, well, that's a first.
Yeah,
we talk through anything and everything.
Exactly. So the really personal side of business where you need to talk to someone one-on-one, that exists every single day. And then we do weekly teaching, just like what you are on today, on a different topic of business and leadership. And a lot of times those are workshop oriented, where we have you roll up your sleeves and say, okay, let's actually create a KRA for one of your team members, or let's actually write down our plan for getting out of debt. That's where it's going to get very tactical. There is probably enough content on there that you could watch for a year, Dave Ramsey teaching business principles. So tons of content, but really our focus is that we want you to be connected to a community of like-minded people that have been where you've been, and then we want you to have coaching that will encourage you, support you along the journey, but also kick in the tail to make sure you do the things you really, really want to do. So that's an overview. If there's more questions on that, bring them up. With that, Angel, welcome to All Access. Really glad to have you, along with Jonathan and Sarah. Make sure you sign up for that one-on-one coaching call.
Steve asks, what is a tip you would have for somebody who operates a remote business? All of my staff works out of the office each week.
Yeah, communicate. The principles do not change, right? Everything that we talked about today should exist, whether it's remote or whether it's in person. It's just honestly more difficult if they are remote. That doesn't mean it can't be done. I've got someone named Amanda. She lives in Atlanta, and she has remote team members all over the country, and she works with them. Her culture is incredible. One of my friends works for her now because I was like, oh man, her culture is incredible. I've got a friend that's looking for a job. Y'all need to work together. And my friend loves it, right? Because that she works remotely, they get to work. But the thing that Amanda does so well is she follows the principles we talked about today, but she communicates so much, and she has her entire organizational structure around doubling down on communication with regard to the principles and the practices and processes that she knows makes the business thrive. There are a lot of people within All Access, so I don't know if you're in All Access yet or not, but there are a lot of people in All Access that lead remote teams that have figured out creative ways and have critically thought about, how do I make this happen for me? So I would definitely kind of ask that question in your mastermind group or on the Facebook group if you are in All Access. Really good question. We also want to let you know that the guide to delegation is something that you can now download. That's EntreLeadership.com/delegation. There's also, if you download this, there's a lesson that accompanies this within All Access. If you go to Dave's video, the event videos, you can see him teaching on delegation, our fundamentals for delegation, and kind of how he learned delegation properly with scaling this business so fast. Really good question. Let's see if there's other questions in here. If you do have more that you have, then please put those in the chat. We want to make sure we address them all.
Julia asked about the book that I mentioned. It's Clay Scroggins, and it's How to Lead When You're Not in Charge. How to Lead When You're Not in Charge by Clay Scroggins.
Very good, very good. Here's Ian's question. I'm considering looking to grow our company influence by going into debt by purchasing another local company for $1 million. Churches go into debt to grow their influence. Should I?
Oh, you're not going to answer that yourself? No, you're going to throw that to me?
I will.
No, I'll say it. Ian,
Okay.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. We would never advocate for you to go into debt, really for any situation. I was able to start and run my business debt-free, grew my business debt-free, sold my business debt-free. It can be done. I will tell you there may be, I would say, or I would ask and wonder, Ian, are there different ways to structure this deal? Do you have to pay $1 million up front? Or can you pay them based on revenue that you make from their business? You're going to pay them for the goodwill that they have built in their market, in their area, and you're going to reward them for that, but over time. Do we have to go out of pocket $1 million up front? I was able to structure my deal in a way that I didn't ask for the full amount up front. I didn't feel comfortable asking for the full purchase price up front. So we got paid month over month over the course of several years, about 1.5 years, 2 years. So there are ways to buy without going into debt. There are ways to honor the sacrifice that the first owner, the founder has made and pay them, reward them for the work that they've done, honor them without you being leveraged up to your eyeballs in debt that we hope you get to pay off. We hope you're able to pay off, but frankly, you may not be able to pay off. So I would never, under any circumstances, say, "Oh yeah, just go take $1 million loan out. Yeah, just go into $1 million worth of debt." The only good debt is in Ramsey is your house. Mm-hmm. That's the one thing where Dave says, "Yeah, you can take a loan." Everything else, we're not touching it with a 10-foot pole.
Exactly. And honestly, with any principle we teach here, not just with debt, but a lot of times if we say like, oh, a lot of other people are doing it this way, that's the biggest example of something that we should be doing the opposite way, right? Normal does not work, right? Normal is broke. Normal is 50% of businesses going out of business by year 5. Normal is 30% not surviving the first decade. Normal does not work. And so never fall for that lie that other people are doing it so I can do it. The Bible says that the borrower is slave to the lender. That's what the Bible says, and we can see examples around the country where that is true. We want you to stay in the driver's seat of your business. We want you to stay the owner of your business, and that's why we will never advise you take debt, because we care about your freedom and your sanity and your safety and that of your team way too much.
Remember when I talked about financial success earlier and I said you could have peace of mind?
Yeah.
You got $1 million hanging out there, brother, you ain't gonna have peace of mind.
Yeah.
That thing's going to keep you up at night. You're going to wake up in cold sweats. You're going to worry about Christmas. You're going to worry about vacation. You're going to worry about your kids' school. Everything gets magnified when you take debt on, especially to the levels at which you're referring to. So bypass it. Avoid it like the plague, man. Do not do it.
And for the record, we were very nice with regard to how we answered that question. I don't know that Dave on the radio, because he doesn't have as much time as we do, I don't know that he'd be as approachable about it. So, but again, it's all
rooted in the fact. So this was the right arena to ask that question.
Yes, Dave always talks about, like, I'm going to yell at someone not to touch a hot stove, right? Mm-hmm. Because we know the potential benefits of doing it the right way and know the consequences of doing it the wrong way.
Lath, welcome to All Access.
Exactly. Glad to have you. Schedule that one-on-one call. Joe asks, we've chosen to be debt-free since 2013. Well done, Joe. The problem is our business has hit a point that the lack of a structured facility is hindering our company culture or official stance when contacting potential clients, educating staff, and building consistent programs. When is risk of debt acceptable?
So I'm going to assume, Joe, by structured facility, you mean an actual location, brick and mortar. Go rent, man. Mm-hmm. Like, go rent. You're a business owner. You don't necessarily want to be a real estate landlord.
Yes.
So that's the transition that happens. Like when the water main breaks, it's on you. When the hot water heater goes out, it's on you. When the AC blows, it's on you. Don't become a landlord unless you have cash to pay for the building. So rent until you can save up enough cash to then go buy something, cash it out. That's what we've done. Dave has done that since day one. We just moved into a new facility, and it was tens of millions of dollars paid for in cash. paid for in cash because we planned. We moved at the speed of cash, and we didn't get too anxious or too greedy is the wrong word, but too hurried to want something that we couldn't afford. We waited. We pumped the brakes. We rented. We were in 5 different locations before we moved into this new building. 5 different locations that were separated by a couple blocks. And it was time consuming, and it was inefficient, and it oftentimes was unproductive walking from building to building or riding the shuttle from building to building, but we got it done. And now that we're here, we're all under one roof. Productivity has soared, and I have to assume because productivity is increasing, revenue will increase, but it's because we don't have any debt payments. We're not paying a mortgage on $50 million because there's $70 million, whatever the building costs. We're debt free. We own it. We meaning Dave.
Yeah.
No, I don't own any of this building, but Dave owns it all, and we're grateful for it.
That's right. Couple things. Sarah asked the question about, can my partner join in on calls with All Access? Absolutely. If you are both co-decision makers, you can absolutely both join your mastermind call and the coaching consultation as well. Also, so many of these questions are about debt and retained earnings. If you are joining All Access, the first thing that I would ask your coach, whether it's me or John or one of our other coaches, whenever you do your one-on-one call, is ask them about the financial piece for business lesson. That's in All Access, and you can watch Dave walk through the baby steps for getting your business out of debt, retained earnings, and then how you structure the company's finances moving forward from that. So again, the lesson is titled Financial Piece for Business. Make sure you ask about that in your one-on-one coaching call. Really good question.
Ryan says, I'm a sole proprietor general contractor with no employees. I use subs for all of the labor. How do I build a team with guys who are not fully employed by me?
Yeah, again, the principles stay the same. A lot of time with contractors, you're just going to have to work a little bit harder, right? You're going to have to double down on communication. And a lot of times, if you start to care about people as people, they start acting like people. If you treat them as a contract, they will act like a contract, right? If you treat them as human beings, they will start acting like human beings. So make sure that you are the best person they've ever worked for. Right? And they should see you as the person they always want to do business with, that they always want to serve, that they always want to be a contractor for, that they always want to sub for, because it's going to be that culture that creates trust. And once you have trust, you can ask the sub to go above and beyond what most subs would. But it is predicated on you going above and beyond what most business owners or general contractors would ever do.
That's right. Troy said, should I have a separate bank for my retained earnings or just a new account within the same bank where I have my savings and checking? Troy, I would say a different account is perfectly fine. I don't want to go to the hassle, the trouble of going to another bank, opening up that account, and then having to figure out, am I going to transfer money to this one or that one? Put it all in one and just have it open up a new account. We'll call it a retained earnings account. We have a checking and a savings, but remember that retained earnings, emergencies, investing in the business, and opportunities that come your way.
Exactly. Joe asked the question, you suggest 3 to 6 months of retained earnings. Our business is seasonal. Do you recommend using the retained earnings to cash flow the business or creating another fund to do that? So is he dipping into the retained earnings during the valleys is how I'm reading it, like during the valleys of the seasonal business?
Well, I think you may have to if you're not prepared, if you don't have it all in savings, and you want to budget for the full year, even though you're doing most of your work within a few months or a time. Remember, retained earnings are for emergencies. You knowing that you are a seasonal business is not an emergency. December 25th is not an emergency, right? I might remember it on December 23rd, but it is not an emergency. It is an opportunity to opportunities that come your way. Your competitor goes out of business. You didn't foresee that coming. They went out. You can buy their products and their widgets or whatever they sell, their equipment for pennies on the dollar, and reinvesting in the organization or in your team. Those are the 3 things that we're using it for. None of those technically are slow season. We have a seasonal business. We're selling popsicles in Minnesota, and it's January. What do we do? Well, you should have thought of that in July when it was actually hot in Minnesota and you got cash flow coming in.
That's right.
Budget for those 12 months. Budget for the slow season.
That's right. Jody asked the question, I have a $50,000 a year tailoring business with 5 seamstresses working for me. I never expected this business to grow this large. This has literally taken over my home. You are our people, Jody. Moving into another building feels impossible. How do I get this business out of my home without getting in over my head? What John said earlier absolutely applies to you. Renting is a great way of doing things, and we would start looking at, you are at the point where you are busting at the seams, right? You need to start looking at potential locations and opportunities to rent. This is not going to be the flashiest location. It's kind of like the car that Dave says you should buy first, right? Whenever you're just trying to build up your emergency fund, you just need something to get you from here to there. You just need to have a place where you can fit these people in and you can do business. And the way you start saving by that is by budgeting, right? So make sure you've got your budget in place, and then you can start giving every dollar a name so that you can start putting money away to say that's going to go to our future rental location.
And I would look at subleasing too, Jody. There may be another office that has an office inside of it type thing, or maybe somebody else's garage. Maybe one of your seamstresses wants to work from home.
That's right. Very good.
Free rent in her house.
With that, Randy and Melissa, welcome to All Access, along with all the other people that signed up. If you still want to sign up, you can do that. EntreLeadership.com/all access. Use that code SAVE till the end of the day today. That'll get you $249. That's $50 off the regular monthly price. Again, we just don't want you to be alone in doing this. We'd love to have you in the program, and if you do sign up, make sure you schedule that one-on-one coaching call. On behalf of John and myself and our entire team, thanks so much for being here with us today. We appreciate you. We're rooting for you. Go get them.
Take care, y'all.